Desert Oracle Radio, the voice of the desert.
Night has fallen on the desert, the brief false autumn, all gone now. Those blessed early cool nights after the usual slog of summer. But there's still another month of desert summertime according to the official calendar. And one mild week does not an autumn make. But it was beautiful for those couple of days and nights, all the windows open on the west side anyway, the shady side. Nothing like a pleasant breeze while the coffee maker burbles. Well, here's an important update if anybody's keeping track. The raven with the strange voice, the one I call Weird Annie. Well, there are several more of her kind, all grown up now, and they've inherited that same distinctive call. So a Joshua tree full of these particular large black corvids means a whole chorus of Weird Annie's back-asswards raven call. Unnatural selection, nature's joker. Yeah, they're all just like her, constantly outraged, hopping up and down, absolutely zero chill, utterly indifferent to me, even when I walk right up to the tree holding my phone up. Talk into this, how's it going, Weird Annie? I see you got your whole brood over here. Nothing. Snow flurries in the Sierra, monsoon floods in Moab, tourists washed away by the swollen creeks, always an exciting time. When the monsoons swell up and Las Vegas quits clocking consecutive 100-degree-plus days. So be careful out there. Or not. It's not my responsibility. Let's open up the Bible. I can't save the tourist and I can't save your soul, but I can open the Bible. If you went to Sunday school or Bible study or whatever they call it, depending on the franchise, well, you probably remember that somewhere along the way, Jesus asked you to consider the lilies and also the sparrows. But only real gospel heads will recall that in both cases, Jesus illustrates that in nature, species thrive without anybody taking care of them because they are of the kingdom of God. Well, this is from Matthew's version, 6:28 and 29. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap, nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to your span of life? But in Luke's version, it gets darker. Consider the ravens, for they neither sow nor reap, and have neither storehouse nor barn, and God feeds them. Now that version is a very old saying. It was old when Jesus was born. Some everyday wisdom that you would have heard in the time after the 7 sages of ancient Greece. Truth known to everyone who ever fought upon, died upon, or picked over a battlefield. Deus Pascit Corvus. God feeds the ravens. That is the Latin motto on a number of medieval coats of arms, sometimes as a threat. The gods will feed the ravens on the flesh of our enemies, and sometimes as a providential sort of joke, as in the heraldry of many families with a surname meaning raven. Corbeau, Corbett, Cuervo, Krasinski, Rambo. That latter surname is Swedish-Norwegian. Sounds like a movie character, doesn't it?
Desert Oracle Radio.
I saw the writer Nina Antonia. I don't know how it's pronounced. She was talking about the classic Cowboys song, Ghost Riders in the Sky, and how it reminded her of the Wild Hunt. I thought about that too, most recently when the Johnny Cash version was playing on the satellite radio Outlaw Country station. I thought about the red-eyed hairy monsters in so many folkloric tales too, in America and everywhere else. But the song Ghost Riders in the Sky is about a cowboy resting up on a ridge when he spies a dreadful, ghostly cattle drive across the dark sky. Their brands were still on fire, and their hooves were made of steel. Their horns were black and shiny, and their hot breath he could feel. A bolt of fear went through him as they thundered through the sky, for he saw the riders coming hard, and he heard their mournful cry. That songwriter, Stan Jones, born in Douglas, Arizona in 1914, said once that an old cowpoke had told him the fable years prior. Most cowboy songs are about riding the range and missing your sweetheart, and wishing for cool water, gunfights and gun smoke, etc. But there's a subset of religious vision songs. Marty Robbins' frantic The Master's Call from his Gunfighter Ballads album is another one. But as Ghost Riders in the Sky that's best known to us today, when it comes to terrifying visions in nature that cause a person to turn their life around, maybe that old cowpoke story really had come down from the old wild hunt tales from Northern Europe. These are the stories, often reported as true events that left the witnesses badly shaken and occasionally beaten, of Woden charging across the night sky on his sled pulled by various fire-snorting beasts in pursuit of equally hellish spirit animals going across the sky. Sometimes, as with the terrifying host of the air in the Hebrides Islands, the mortal can be swept up into this fury, levitated, and even carried for miles. Returned, perhaps, when the hosts of the air get tired of you. Cattle and sheep were most often the victims, found later in curious poses, dropped from high above, the corpses broken, the blood gone. Such things happen even in our own era, now and then, our own era of Mythbusters and Ring cameras and boredom. Livestock mutilation, that's what they call it these days, and the kids like to blame it on alien spaceships or heavy metal rock and roll, a style last popular with the kids some 40 years ago. Stan Jones wrote dozens of songs that charted over the decades and some very memorable film music, such as the theme from John Ford's Western classic, The Searchers. And Stan acted in plenty of Westerns for both the big screen and television. While visiting his mother over the Christmas holidays in December 1955, he was interviewed by the Petaluma Argus-Courier and asked about his interesting career progression. Because Stan Jones was a real cowboy and a real ranger, he lived a life of grand adventure. Because that's how he made his living. Former Petaluman home for the holidays was the headline on Christmas Eve of that year, and I'll read a couple lines from the newspaper archive. The day Stan Jones was born, Pancho Villa was shelling a Mexican town a few yards across the border from Jones's parents' ranch at Douglas, Arizona. When Stan Jones was a small boy, he knew Pancho and many another famous Western hero and villain as he grew up. Adventure remained his partner as a kid cowpuncher on the family ranch, rodeo circuit rider, U.S. Navy sailor, and a logger in the Pacific Northwest. The logging job nearly cost him his life when a work train crashed in a tunnel, killing 3 other workmen. Stanley Jones survived. Eventually, he came back to California to finish school at UC Berkeley. Then he became a ranger, first in the U.S. Forest Service and then in the National Park Service. I tell you, reading newspaper features on people from a century ago was a good way to realize just how soft and dumb we've all become. Stan Jones wrote songs purely for himself, figuring he penned thousands of verses over the years, but he kept his poetry to himself. People liked to see cowboys sing in motion pictures or hear them on the radio in those days, but not so much in real life. Even if they were real-life cowboys. Jones told the paper, "It seems silly, I know, but it was a rough life in those days and rough country. and I wasn't about to let anyone know I wrote songs. But sometime in 1948 or 49, when Ranger Jones was on the job in Death Valley National Monument, he remembered the fable of the Ghost Riders and wrote it down in song, put it to a haunting, memorable melody. Not long after, the park superintendent assigned Ranger Jones to show some Western movie location scouts around the harsh desert landscape. And Ranger Jones wound up singing Ghost Riders in the Sky to these guys as an example of cowboy campfire music, his own. They liked it. And they liked Stanley Jones. He was promptly hired as a technical advisor on the picture, which was called The Walking Hills. The Petaluma newspaper continues. Jones made a half-dozen motion pictures and wrote 4 television shows. At least 11 million record sales bear testimony to his prowess as a composer. Recently, he portrayed a camp counselor in Spin and Marty on Disney's new daily TV show, The Mickey Mouse Club, on ABC. I wonder how that Mickey Mouse Club worked out. Jones's last movie role was in Ten Who Dared, the Buena Vista production released in 1960. He played Seneca Howland, one of the Daring 10 on John Wesley Powell's famous exploration of the Colorado River, which was filmed on location in the Grand Canyon. Not a great movie, considered one of the worst Disney westerns, but it must have been great fun to replicate Major Powell's wild adventure down the Colorado. What a life. And people are still listening to his songs today, still appreciating the movies he made, except for that last one, I guess. And people are still talking about his songs and what these songs might mean on the internet in 2024. Stanley Jones was just 49 years old when he died in 1963 in Los Angeles. He is buried at Calvary Memorial Park in Cochise County, Arizona, right near his birthplace in Douglas. And the soundscapes for this movie are composed and performed by our own Ranger Jones, Red, Blue, Black, Silver. Walking a trail out by the power lines, I catch my dog eating the wing of a long dead bird. And a mile later, he's chomping on a big sun-bleached bone from an animal unknown. And later that night, when I give him his good, healthy dinner, he glares up at me because there's not enough turkey meat. For his taste, I suppose. The kibble's a little dry. Incredible nerve, pure gall. Dog number 7, I think, including the childhood dogs I remember. Not a purebred among them until my parents decided later in their lives to get a Pomeranian. And when my dad passed on, 3 decades ago now, well, that dog wound up living with me in San Francisco in a 3rd-floor apartment at Bush and Leavenworth, big round bay window on the corner, looking out on the chaos and beauty below. I figured out that my dad enjoyed taking Rusty the Pomeranian to saloons, to bar rooms. Because whenever I'd walk by one, the dog would just head in. And there were still a lot of saloons in what the maps call Lower Knob Hill and everybody else called the Tender Knob, right between the hill and the loin. After work, editing eye surgery monographs for the Academy of Ophthalmology across from the Buena Vista by the Hyde Street Pier, I'd walk up and over Russian Hill, get home and get the dog. We'd stroll around down to Polk Gulch, over to Grace Cathedral, and that dog would come to a complete stop at every set of swinging doors, sniffing the beer air, listening to the jukebox, straining on the leash to get inside. Sometimes I'd pick him up and we'd go in where he'd settle on a bar stool next to me, and I'd have an Anchor Steam or maybe an Irish coffee, and even the grumbliest old working man deep into his 5th or 6th beer would be charmed by this little dog and his quiet but curious personality. Give a man a few drinks and show him a good dog, and it's a doorway to the past. Memories of childhood, of hunting and fishing trips, of marriages happy and sad, children grown up and gone, fortunes won and lost. The Pomeranian, I learned in time, is really the German Spitz, bred down in size from the original Teutonic Knights working dog, in large part because England's Queen Victoria had a pair of very popular toy Pomeranians later in her reign. The Wolf Spitz was the working dog of Teutonic Prussia in the coastal north of modern-day Poland and eastern Germany. They are mentioned in Teutonic Order documents going back to 1450, which explains, I believe, why these little dog descendants of Pomerania are so bold and brave. In their ancestral memory, ever present in mind, they are 50-pound dogs regularly employed by shepherd and warrior, bred for the cold, cold winters, hardy in hail. There are some parts of life we measure in generations. Raising your children, silver anniversaries, 20 years of schooling, and they put you on the day shift, etc. And there are some parts we measure in our domestic animals and dogs. A tighter time frame, 10 or 12 years, sort of sundial for your lifespan. When you live past 7 or 8 dogs in a row, get your affairs in order. From Amboy to Zzyzx, broadcasting across the Great Mojave Wilderness and around the world through the magic of podcasting, this is Desert Oracle Radio with soundscapes by RedBlueBlackSilver. This program comes to you from the Santa Minerva Radio Information Network. Visit our website at desertoracle.com. And thank you to our supporters who keep this show alive through their patronage at patreon.com/Desert Oracle. Listen up, friends. If you're in Santa Fe, I'm going to be bumming around town later this week, this first Thursday and Friday evening of September, it looks like. Nothing official, purely personal. But I met some interesting people last time I did a show in Santa Fe, speaking of park rangers. And I'd be glad to meet up with a couple of you if you're still around at some watering hole or another, either of those nights. And if it's too loud, well, we can just walk around the plaza between bar stops. Beautiful time of year for that. Looks like it's going to be about, low 50s Fahrenheit. Send me a message on the pneumatic tube system, whatever we have going. And I want to say hello to our friend and listener, John Greismer, in New Hampshire. He says, as far as I can tell, I'm the only guy in New Hampshire with a Desert Oracle sticker on his pickup. Thank you for sending this postcard. In reference to our Betty and Barney Hill episode from the beginning of this year. And the postcard has a picture of the historical plaque. Good night from the voice of the desert.